A huge weather pattern change will be coming to the United States over the next few days, bringing the potential for more severe weather, including damaging winds, large hail, and isolated tornadoes. Additionally, major flooding will continue to be a concern over the weekend, and then by next week, much warmer weather is on the horizon and more shots of severe weather will return. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country today, and we are coming off of a big day of severe weather across the Midwest. That area of storm activity really fell apart as it got to Michigan, but we ended up having a pretty large area of damaging winds and even a few tornadoes yesterday, including one that happened just outside of Davenport, Iowa. And on top of that, there was a flash flood emergency in Davenport, Iowa, which we'll talk more about here in just a moment. And then back along the East Coast, things are at least a little bit quieter compared to what we had the last few days. I do think there's another chance of at least some scattered storms today, but severe weather does appear unlikely at this time. And as we just alluded to, there was a flash flood emergency yesterday in Davenport, Iowa, where around 5 to 7 inches of rain fell. These are just some of the sites that happened yesterday. We had a bunch of cars that were stranded, and unfortunately, this happened across a very large part of the downtown area of Davenport, which is home to around 200,000 people. Unfortunately, again, a lot of vehicles stranded. We've luckily not heard of any fatalities out of this event so far. Let's hope it stays that way. But obviously, there were many vehicles stranded, and many water rescues did happen yesterday. And we did end up having a lot of wind reports across the Midwest yesterday, including over 150 wind reports. The majority of those were in the Midwest, but we even had a little batch of storms fire up late last night back over east of Kansas City, which produced a significant amount of damaging winds. Lots of tree limbs and power lines were reported down. We ended up having 2 reports of tornadoes yesterday, one of which was actually in northeast Colorado, and the other one in southwestern Iowa. With that said, we did have a radar-confirmed tornado just outside of Davenport, Iowa, and we may have had a brief one back over in Wisconsin, and there may have been a brief one also in western Missouri. So generally speaking, wasn't a tornado outbreak, but we end up seeing a few tornadoes. Now let's talk more about the weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days, and to look at that, we are going to look at our mid-level flow. This is what it looks like right now across the United States. We have a trough that is located over the upper Midwest, and then a ridge that is built back over in the Southwest, which is helping to allow for northwesterly flow, which may actually allow for a few lines of thunderstorms over the next few days. But really, over the next few days, we are expecting this low pressure system that brought severe weather yesterday to bring a little bit more severe weather today. But I think by tomorrow, this thing's out of the United States, and we're going to see at least somewhat quieter weather for the Midwest and the Ohio Valley on Sunday and Monday. But by the early to middle portion of next week, we really are dealing with a very different weather pattern, something we haven't really seen much of so far this year, and that is a very zonal jet stream. This is basically means that we're not going to see any major storm systems, I think, for the first few days of next week. But I do think the weather is going to uptick by around Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, as we may get a shortwave trough or two that move across the northern plains and the Midwest, and this could be our next legitimate shot of some at least significant severe weather, including damaging winds, hail, and the potential for tornadoes. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are days that I'd be keeping a close eye on across the Midwest and the northern plains, and then eventually by Saturday and Sunday of next weekend, things become more uncertain. But the GFS model in the long term is hinting at a large ridge that'll be in place across the lower 48, mainly to the south of Kansas, and then further off to the north, we'll still have mostly zonal flow, but we may have a few shortwave troughs that at least bring some isolated to scattered threat of severe weather for those across, again, the northern and central plains, the Midwest, and perhaps the Ohio Valley. But it does look like a large ridge will be building across the lower 48 as we go throughout the next few weeks, which would help to prevent a lot of significant severe weather events, mainly to the south, though, of Nebraska. And in just a moment, we're going to talk way more in detail about the threat of severe weather over the next 7 days and the temperature trends. But before we do that, we need to talk about today's sponsor. Before we get too far into the forecast, I've got to ask you a question. When was the last time an app put money back into your pockets for things you were already going to buy? That's exactly what Upside does. It's totally free to use. Just install the app with the top link in the description below, link your debit or credit card, and browse cashback offers on gas, groceries, and even your go-to takeout spots. Once you claim an offer, you pay like normal, and Upside will send you real cash back. There are no hoops and no catches. I've been using Upside for years, and just yesterday I went to Buffalo Wild Wings and earned 27% cash back and scored a few bucks back without doing anything extra. Just swiped my card, paid like usual, and dug into some cheese curds, and then after that I uploaded my receipt right to the Upside app and got my cash back. Some of the top Upside users are making up to $300 a month in cash back. To see how much you could earn with Upside, click the top link in the description below or scan the QR code code on your screen now to download the free Upside app. And be sure to use code VELOCITY to get 25 cents off per gallon of your first tank of gas. So what are you waiting for? Start earning cash back now, and let's get back to the forecast. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, and we'll begin with today, which is Saturday, and we have a slight risk of severe weather in place for Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, and a large marginal threat that goes from Wisconsin back into the high plains and also into the mid-Atlantic. It's kind of a weird shape today, but generally speaking, the biggest concern across the board will be damaging winds and also some large hail. There could be some frequent lightning as well out of some of the storms that develop later today. If thunder roars, go indoors if you have outdoor plans. There's also a very low chance of an isolated tornado or two, mainly across the thumb and also northern parts of Michigan. So stay weather aware, have ways to receive warnings. I don't really foresee there being a live stream today, but just make sure you click the bell icon down below so you're notified in case we do go live. On Sunday, the threat of severe weather is not looking too crazy. We got two small marginal threats of severe weather in place, one in the southern plains, one back over in the northeast. I actually think tomorrow could be interesting back over in the southern plains. There may be a remnant mesoscale convective vortex, which one could bring significant flooding, and then two actually may spin up a couple of tornadoes. If for some reason there is a tornado threat down here tomorrow, there is actually a chance of a live stream, so definitely stay tuned. But right now, the Storm Prediction Center only has a wind threat in place, no hail threat, and no tornado risk as of right now. But again, I do think an isolated tornado or two are possible in the southern plains. And on Monday, this is one of the smallest days of severe weather that we've had in a long time. We have a tiny marginal threat in the northern plains right now. However, I do think there is a chance that the Storm Prediction Center adds a marginal threat, maybe even a slight risk in a future outlook of severe weather back over in parts of the southern plains, depending on there being a remnant mesoscale convective vortex. It really depends on what happens over the next 24 hours, but this is another area I'd be keeping a close eye on Monday for hail, wind, and maybe a couple of tornadoes as well. So let's go day by day with the timing of severe weather, including what is happening later this week. We'll begin with what's happening today. We're expecting a few storms to fire up even before lunchtime today back over northern Michigan, which may produce an isolated tornado threat and damaging winds. By around 3 to 4 o'clock this afternoon, a few more storms will go up, mainly across Indiana and back into Kentucky. We'll have a line of storms that develops with damaging winds, a little bit of hail, and maybe a low tornado risk, but I think it's going to be very low down there, and a very brief tornado risk as well. By 7 to 8 o'clock, the storms will move towards Cincinnati and Dayton, where they'll likely fall apart. Damaging wind threat much lower by that point, and then during the overnight hours into Sunday, things are looking fairly quiet. Maybe a few more pop-up storms on Sunday during the afternoon. The southern plains is one of those areas that I'm a little bit more concerned about over the next 48 hours, mainly because of there being a lot of storms down here, and we may see stationary storms, which could lead to more significant flooding. So today we're expecting some scattered storms, mainly across Oklahoma. We'll be watching for some damaging winds, isolated hail, maybe a brief tornado, but flash flooding honestly rings a bell here with all the rain that we're going to be seeing and how really stationary it's going to be here across the southern plains today. By tomorrow morning, there will still be rain out there, especially across Texas. There is a flood watch in effect for parts of North Texas for the next 48 hours, and then tomorrow more rain is expected to fall, and we may see the potential for a localized flooding, especially back over in North Texas. The current rainfall estimates from the HRRR model are indicating that we could have a widespread area in both Oklahoma and North Texas between 1 to 4 inches of rainfall. Localized areas could pick up as much as 4 to even 10 inches of rainfall over the next 48 hours. Again, definitely be staying weather aware, especially in low-lying areas if you're near a river or if you're just driving on the roadways. Turn around, don't drown. Cannot stress that enough. We've had way too many stalled vehicles recently from the recent flooding across the United States. And then as we go into Sunday, I would be keeping an eye on Oklahoma, Arkansas, and even back over into North Texas for additional rainfall and perhaps a remnant mesoscale convective vortex, which may bring an isolated risk of severe weather to Oklahoma and western Arkansas on Sunday. And then on Monday, possibly something similar to that happens back over in southwest Missouri, eastern Oklahoma, and western Arkansas, with an isolated threat of severe weather being in place, but obviously flash flooding being a big concern with how stationary these storms are going to be moving. And unfortunately, I really cannot rule out another big flooding event happening somewhere in the southern plains over the next few days with how slow these storms are going to be moving. The Weather Prediction Center also agrees with there being quite a bit of rainfall over the next 7 days. This is between now and Friday. Anywhere in the purple, red, any of those colors, you're basically at least expecting 1 to 2 inches of rain, but many areas back over in Oklahoma should at least see 3 to 4 inches of rain over the next few days, and then Florida will be staying very active over the next 7 days with a widespread area picking up 3 to 6 inches of rainfall. And then beyond this weekend, we are anticipating the severe weather potential to come to a little bit of a lull, I think, during the early portion of this upcoming week, but I think by Wednesday is when we may have a shortwave trough eject over the Rockies. This This may bring the return for at least some isolated to scattered severe weather to the central plains and back into the Midwest. Not expecting anything super major though as of right now, and then by Thursday and Friday, we'll be keeping an eye on the same exact area for at least some isolated to scattered severe weather. And then by next weekend, again, I'm not really seeing anything major in the next 7 days. I think overall the major severe weather events are at least coming to a little bit of a lull, but I do think there's at least a chance for a live stream one of these next 7 days. I think we'll at least have something that is streamable, so definitely stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live at any point over the next 7 days. I really think though Wednesday to Friday is the time frame to watch for some sort of shortwave trough, which can bring some more significant localized events of severe weather. And then the temperatures over the next 7 days, at least for now, are a little bit below average across the Great Plains, but expect warmer weather as we go into the work week. We are expecting a much warmer weather pattern to arise across the Central Plains back into the Northeast, with below average temperatures back over in the Northern Plains, as our troughing and our jet stream is going to be set up very far off to the north. That'll allow for at least some cooler temperatures across the Northern Plains during the middle of the week. And by the end of the work week, that warm weather will continue, and we might even see the return of some record-breaking high temperatures back over in the Midwest and the Central Plains by the weekend. And then by next week, things get a bit more uncertain. But it does look like it'll be warm over the next 7 to 10 days, especially if you are in the Great Plains. But obviously right now, it's a little bit below average. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We'll likely have no video tomorrow, assuming the weather stays quiet, so just stay tuned. We'll have a live stream possibly one of these upcoming days, but again, generally speaking, videos will be every other day, assuming the weather is on the quieter side of things. Also, a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Upside. If you want to download Upside, it is the top link in the description below, and use code VELOCITY to get 25 cents off your first tank of gas for every single gallon. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you guys all again in the next video or live stream.